Today I'm going to be talking about why you're not recovering. If you're watching these videos, you're sitting stuck, chronic guilt and anxiety is locked on 24/7, and you feel like you're in that sort of mental lock where OCD's got all these tentacles that are sort of locking in deeply and causing that chronic guilt and anxiety cycle, I'm here to help you with that. Now, in these videos, I try and break it down philosophically and look at all the components and nuances that are keeping you stuck. And people have often said to me, they say, Rob, why don't you do videos where there's sort of numbers and text and colors and diagrams popping up around your head? And the main reason I don't do that is because this audience is not 5. And we're talking about something that's complex. Often in today's world with YouTube, people like it in super simplistic form and super easy to see in colors and some clown counting 1, 2, 3 of do this, do that, and then an animal pointing to another thing. We don't need that in a subject like this. We're not trying to make this into some complete bite-sized education course for kids. We need to look at things in a nuanced way, in an adult discussion of what's going on in your thinking. And today things are too simplified that people learn to not think. Whereas from the videos, you want to be learning to think and process. If I went back in time and I looked at philosophers that were great speakers on certain subjects, I said, excuse me, do you mind if I just stop you for a second and we draw a painted diagram? And can you splice that up and say this here and make sure that that point's really quick so that people don't lose engagement? It loses all the magic, it loses all the depth, it loses all the philosophical character. And that is what is vital to OCD recovery. Absolutely vital that we look at things as they are in a discussion, breaking down those elements so that you can recover. Now, usually what's happening along the recovery journey and why people stay stuck is because they haven't got an understanding of how acceptance needs to be at play. Acceptance roots out under the chronic guilt and anxiety, getting under those tentacles. Oh, Rob, you say that in a very elaborate way there, but that's very difficult to do. Yes, it is very difficult. It is challenging. It's not rocket science, but it's going to take practice. Bookshelves in bookshops about anxiety have hundreds and hundreds of books all about anxiety, completely watered down to mindfulness, leave thoughts there. You're watching this video because that didn't work. The majority of people with chronic severe OCD, that does not work for, and I was one of them. It's trying to make things too simplistic. We've got to be real about what works. We know if we're getting better because we feel an absence of symptoms. And that is key. So let's look at that. If you are feeling chronic guilt locked on 24/7 that's not releasing and it's just on all the time and it feels like you're simmering away in a sort of cortisol soup, you need to get under that. People kid themselves and say, oh, I've been sitting with mindfulness for 10 years and I have some ups and downs, but most of the time there's a sort of simmering guilt. That ain't going. You've given that long enough. Usually 6 months, a year, whatever. If the simmering guilt's there and you've got a belief that's at play there, you need to break that belief down. You need to shift the gears on that belief. Okay? I don't have any chronic guilt and anxiety today. It feels like another lifetime in the past when I did. That is because there is no OCD in my life. There is no OCD day to day. It doesn't even come into my reality. It doesn't come into anything that I do. I don't even think about it. Apart from in the work that I do, I'm talking about OCD. There is no OCD. Like, I don't wake up and think, how's my OCD? I'm not managing it, which is what most people talk about. I'm much better at managing. I don't have to manage. There is no managing. There is no intrusive thoughts. What? No intrusive thoughts at all? No, I don't have intrusive thoughts. There's nothing. An intrusive thought is something that you don't want to have. So it intrudes. Yes, if I'm standing on a cliff, I get that feeling. What if I get that, right? But day to day, there's really no intrusive thoughts because there's nothing my brain is not trying to attack. It's like, he doesn't give a shit what's thrown out by the brain. So I feel at peace. I feel calm. That doesn't feel like anything like that, right? Now, the problem is when you are in a position where you're no longer stuck with OCD, it's easy to forget what that lockup was like. Now, so what happens is people go off and they're like, oh, I feel better, and then they never talk about OCD. But my mission is bringing OCD out the dark. So I have to revisit that, and I have to think exactly how I used to think and how that mechanism operated. In, say, existential OCD, you'll have maybe multiple themes all interlocking and at play. Maybe it's solipsism, fear that you're the only conscious being, particularly with AI coming around more and more, fear of simulations. But then there may be the fear of not connecting with your parents, your loved ones. It's interplaying with relationship OCD. Then it creates a feeling of responsibility OCD where should I do something about this now? Do I need to break up? Do I need to this? How do I know that this? And it's doing all of those from different angles. Why? Because it has got a couple of core beliefs at play, and it knows, like with a tooth that's sore, those are the points where it's going to cause the tenderness. OCD recovery requires developing that depth of acceptance to get under that, okay? When I hear people talk about, OCD on some YouTube video, and I don't hear the word acceptance, I don't hear unconditional acceptance, I don't hear depth and nuances around complicated topics of OCD, and I think, that guy's very smart on OCD. I know they don't understand OCD. Most, in the 90%, don't. Most specialists, most anxiety experts don't. How so? Well, you've been on the journey like I have. I went to specialists and I would sit down and I'd say, I've got sensory motor OCD, I'm stuck on my breath, I'm stuck on my blinky, I can't get this feeling out of my head. Those are just thoughts. You really need to leave those there, do some deep breathing. Here's a mindfulness book. You need to ground yourself. I was damn scared I was going to be stuck like that the rest of my life. Every second, every minute, that felt unbearable. That would not come down until that core fear was reduced. Okay? That wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to just like that because I left it there. Yeah, sure, I got glimmers of relief. But the glimmer was like a small wave with another 16 huge waves about to follow, and then an endless load of those because there was no change. There was no change. The sea was never going to calm. Now the sea's completely calm. Okay, do I ever get a rise in anxiety if I get a health scare? If someone says to me today, yeah, we think we found this lump and that, yeah, I'm going to get anxiety, I have to go through the tools, bring myself down. I imagine I'm going to probably, I don't even like to say with those situations because I have been in that situation. They found a lump in my throat. They thought I had a cancer. It took me a couple of days to rebalance because of how serious that situation was. I was quite anxious at first because of an anxious tendency, genetically most likely to OCD, then balanced out, accepted what it was, and it went back to peace. But say I found out today I was terminally ill. Maybe I'd be quite anxious. Maybe I would have a panic attack sensation. I'm pretty confident that after a while it would come down and I'd be back to balance and I would accept it. Long term for sure, but I don't even like to say that because I always feel that does a disservice to people going through things that I haven't been through, right? So for example, I don't know what it's like to be in war. I have not been in war. I have not been starving, yeah? So for me to say, I would feel like this, I'd feel like that. I'm confident with the tools I've got, I would probably handle it pretty well, right? But I can't say with certainty. Now, with my own journey with OCD and anxiety, I can say navigating life and all the obstacles that come with life and situations that the average person would think was very tough and difficult, doesn't bother me. People who know me say all the time, Rob is the calmest guy that we know by miles, and I was the one with OCD, right? I never really worry about anything much. I'm pretty calm about most things. I accept things as they are. I have a deep view of life that I'm not here for forever. It's very short in terms of our life, and I enjoy what the pleasures that we can have in life and working on the mission that we do with OCD. And I don't bank on being here forever, and I feel somewhat distant from the crowd and distant from a lot of society because I see things very philosophically, and I feel separate to a lot of that because I can see all the circus and the madness that most humans engage in. Now, that doesn't mean if I was trying to bulletproof myself, which would become compulsive, I'd be like, yes, I'll get my mind just right. So if I ever went to war, I could be at peace, and I'll get my mind just right. So if I ever was ill, I could. No. Maybe I have trouble if I get ill. Maybe I get anxious. That is accepting. Maybe I couldn't accept in that situation. I'll accept I couldn't accept. I'm not trying to bolt down acceptance, which is a key part. I've been working with OCD for years. I've worked with the team over 45,000 people. We have the best results of anywhere for OCD by miles because of the depth we get in and what we look at, and you probably know from having watched these videos. So I'm very aware that acceptance requires multiple angles. You need to not bolt it down and control it and lock it. So you have to accept, hey, I don't know. Maybe I couldn't accept in that situation. Maybe I develop an Alzheimer's in the future and forget the tools. That's a common last fear of OCD when I was recovering. And maybe I struggle again. So be it. I accept the struggling, I accept the not accepting. That's also part of it. But the recovery journey is going to take conditioning in perspectives and discipline, as well as a deep level of acceptance, right? And that's a journey to go through. It doesn't matter how long you've been stuck. It doesn't matter how many years you've been stuck. I worked with a woman who was 84 recently. I've worked with people stuck for 40 years. I've been stuck for year upon year upon year upon year, 24/7. I work with people who've just got OCD after a few months. I've worked with people that are 8 years old with OCD. Everything, every situation. There's the most severe cases in the world of OCD, chances are they've come into me, right? So it's like if you were an athlete, you're being tested against hard opponents. Our team, me, are being tested against very hard, challenging OCD situations. You know, so someone's coming into me, they're in a moment that it's a crisis. They're like, I've spent 20 years stuck. I've been in hospital 3 times. I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I have constant panic attacks. I can barely eat. Rob, help me, right? I can't have wishy-washy tools like the bloody bookshelf has, which is like, tell yourself a mantra in the mirror. Tell yourself you're going to overcome this. Tell yourself that you're strong. You're going to be a boss. You're going to but OCD don't give a shit about that just complete drivel, because it wants substance. It needs to be shown that in that circumstance, you can still bring the fear down. A lot of my journey involved accepting worst case scenarios, coming to terms with lots of challenging situations and going straight into the storm. My worst fears in the past, many of them to do with real event, false memory OCD, I just surrendered to. Yeah, maybe I am going to jail for 20 years and I'm going to just have to read books, play a bit of chess, eat food, and it's going to be a bit boring at times. As soon as I internally surrendered to that, which was a process and took time and I couldn't just do instantly, all that shit that was around harm OCD in so many areas, that just went like that. And I was like, oh my God. Then I had that sort of epiphany moment of, oh my God, I've been stuck for so many years. Then the lost years, having to accept being stuck, having to accept that how many compulsions I'd been doing, which my whole life was a compulsion at that time. So that is going to happen along the recovery journey. You are going to experience this in so many different dimensions. And you are going to experience that along this journey. You're going to see different layers where you're going to see that there's so many false dawns. It's not like, oh, finish line, recovery. It's layers of false dawns till that level of acceptance settles in. And when that settles in, gradually that then fades out more and more. But you'll have many false dawns, you'll have many peaks and troughs. You're going to experience so much of that. That is what is involved in the journey. I'm going to be covering, I said I wasn't going to splice these videos up, but somebody's at the door, so I am having to splice the video up. And now someone's calling me because they're at the door. So I will be back on another video to cover this in more detail. Reach out to us if you want help with your journey along the OCD recovery journey. Get in touch. Email us at info@OCDrecovery, and we are here to help you every step of the way.